This draft, very unusual draft actually in this game, where we see usually in LCK this week, mostly it's been a ban priority on junglers. This is a very big change where you see the top priority here on Camille and Renekton. The Gnar as well being taken away here, so Fredit Brion definitely eliminating some of their best champions for Hoya as well. With this Gnar gone, the Jace taken away. 3 top bans here for Fredit Brion, a very unusual start to the draft.
Yeah, you really don't see that very often, as you mentioned. I mean, all of the top junglers are available. We got Hecarim, Udyr, Lilia. You have your pick, right? If you want to go Nidalee, sure. Seems like they're thinking about the Hecarim here, so they will go for that. The Kai'Sa's still available if Henna wants to jump back onto that pick that has just been so popular and is, of course, his most played, like many AD carries.
Yeah.
But he's actually going to lock in the Tristana.
Tristana actually is his highest win rate. It's been the champion he's found the most success with. The Rel for Delight, on the other hand, his worst champion so far this season. But it does pair very well with the Tristana. And, you know, this is a matchup where we don't know the matchup yet, but where you're very likely to see a Kai'Sa response. It now feels a little bit less comfortable for Liiv Sandbox. And you don't show a whole lot with Fredit Brion. You're kind of just taking the tier list here. I really like the Gragas pickup, though, because that is so stable, and it gives you so many opportunities to flex. This is something that we're not going to see, but, well, we're going to see it, but it's not going to be strong for the same reasons I was describing, because this one is obviously going to be support. But, you know, taking a little bit of a page out of Damwon Kia's book with this one.
Yeah, pretty interesting draft here for Liiv Sandbox. As you mentioned, you don't want to just lock in the Kai'Sa right away if you're not 100% sure about into that Tristana matchup. The Udyr is going to be the choice into the Hecarim. And we'll see what Bro decide to ban. Do you just try to take down some of these top 80 carries that are still left available and give Tristana the best chance of carrying? It looks like it, at least with the Kai'Sa.
Yeah, the Kai'Sa gets removed here. Thresh has already been removed, so you're not as worried about something like the Aphelios coming through here. And even Xayah doesn't feel too comfortable into this bottom lane.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same sort of power it would have otherwise. So I think you can even move away from the bot bans now that the Kai'Sa is removed. That's the one you're most worried about. Orianna gets taken away from Lava here. And his second most played champion is the Zoe, which I think has a lot of strong synergy. Kalista removed. That was a shocker.
Yeah.
I think the Zoe has a lot of synergy with the Udyr, actually, because of his ability to gain consistent vision. Even if you're behind, he can clear wards so quickly, as well as place wards with near impunity because of his movement speed, his ability to run in and get out even if he's spotted. That would be a strong ban here, I think, for Lava. They take away the Scion, though, instead. Stable matchup into the Aatrox.
Yeah, a pick that has been seeing some nice success so far, especially if it doesn't get punished early. I feel like Liiv Sandbox with Krako and Summit could have absolutely punished the Scion early, though, which is why that ban is kind of interesting to me. I think the Zoe, I was kind of on the same page with you. This looks like the right ban, especially for Lava, but they don't respect it. They respect the Scion and the potential in the team fights to do some crazy stuff, so they ban that away. We all saw what Zoe can do, the potential of Zoe, when Faker was playing her yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Lava's like, yep, now it's my turn.
The Ezreal pick here definitely does end up scaling pretty well into the later parts of the game, but I don't know if that's really the composition that Liiv Sandbox should be drafting for right now, and it feels like this LeBlanc hover is so dangerous, the composition that becomes so all-in on doing damage early and controlling those early stages. Don't think we'll see any Nasus mid, I would have to guess. But this one, I like this one a lot more because it does kind of go down the route of safe scaling while you also still have good objective control with the Aatrox and the Hecarim. Gragas has really nice engage too. Okay, this is just
back.
New meta.
Yeah. Cho'Gath is it's just pretty insane. Generally, you see him into tank top, right?
Yeah.
You see a lot of... We saw actually the solo kill of
was
Cho'Gath onto Scion the other day. And he has some really nice HP shred, but into Aatrox is going to be a whole other scenario, right? He doesn't have huge burst damage unless you're going AP, and even that, I mean, Aatrox will probably be fine against that. So seems like they just really like the pick of Cho'Gath. I'm not sure about Cho'Gath and the Aatrox. I have not seen this match.
I
all that much.
I don't think it's going to favor the Cho'Gath in lane, but we know Hoya is someone who's not looking to dominate lane, playstyle-wise, right? Fredit Brion don't usually play around the top side of the map, which is a little bit puzzling to see the Udyr priority when you do give that consideration. But in terms of what he's going to be able to do in team fights, if Zoe hits a sleep, you have follow-up CC, you can then hit a silence, and there's a lot of ways to blow somebody up who's isolated. And a squishy lineup, like what Liiv Sandbox are running here, that is quite potent. And then if you consider what it's able to do when paired with Rel's Magnet Storm, for example, you could see really nice potential here for a Cho'Gath that should, in theory, be very tanky in the later stages of the game. I think what Liiv Sandbox draft brings to the table here, Valdez, is really nice objective control with the Aatrox. It's going to be hard to control Herald if you're on the side of Fredit Brion, and it also scales up very nicely. It's kind of a catch-all composition. Doesn't have any big glaring weaknesses, you know, minus the Aatrox is falling off later on.
Well, we'll have to see how it goes as we are going to hop on to the Rift for game number 1 here. Liiv Sandbox against Bro. And everything is on the line for Liiv Sandbox in this match. If they lose, they're out. They do not get a chance at making the playoffs. They only have 4 wins right now, so in general, they're going to have a pretty difficult time of making the playoffs, even if they do win this match, especially with the 11 losses, compared to competing against 3 other teams that only have 10 losses. So, you know, they basically have to be perfect, and then they have to have some of the other teams they're competing against lose. So,
yeah,
it's not going to be easy for them, but step at a time. If they can take a 2-0 tonight.
It is crazy, the story here of Liiv Sandbox, because Fredit Brion come into this match favored as well, most people would say, based on their round 2 performance. And at the beginning of the season, it just felt like Fredit Brion was destined for 10th, and that there was going to be very little talk of playoff excitement for this team. But the improvement that they've made is so massive. And you could say the same about Liiv Sandbox, too. They've kind of been both hovering around the bottom side of the bracket until this very late stage of the season, where, you know, the mistakes of the early part of the season and some of those early losses that people forget about because they're so long ago really come back to bite you, because both of these teams look like they could be exciting playoff contenders. And because they had such an unfortunate start, you know, we have to be worried for them here.
Yeah, you know, generally in the LCK, and as it is in many leagues, you have top of the table teams, and then you have what we call the east side of the bracket, right? But this split specifically, we've had a lot of upsets, a lot of interesting games even, where a lower level team will really challenge a top of the table team, and it just feels like it's pretty balanced at the moment. Not to say that Dalmonkia and those guys up at the top aren't favored, but more than ever, you know, it's not like just a decided matchup every time we come into these games. Like even KT versus Gen G later, who knows, you know? Will KT show up? As we are taking a look at some of Summit's stats.
In round 2 specifically, I mean, highest damage per minute across all top laners. His laning phase has been fantastic. And we see the Cho'Gath pick into this Aatrox so far at this early stage, ending up being very nice. Actually cost him a minion there while also trading for health. But Summit is a player who is kind of recently become a carry top laner in how much damage output he's able to put off in team fights. And something like an Aatrox for him with his playstyle is going to be super strong going into the mid game and controlling these early objectives. Nice dodge there on the Rupture. And I'm very excited, Valdez, about Liiv Sandbox potential. Like, their run becomes so much more interesting because, as we see this Tristana win rate, or rather a win streak, their run would mean that they have to win this. Also, they have to beat DRX later on, who's going to be their final opponent, their final boss, which would be very impressive to defeat. And then a lot of things have to go wrong for the other teams on their way. But if they can make it, I mean, what a story that would be for them in playoffs. What an unlikely hero to rise through. But I feel like Fredit Brion's story kind of mirrors that.
Yeah.
That's why this series is so exciting to me.
Yeah. They're both great stories, you know? Imagine the team that in the beginning took the biggest upset of the LCK that we've had in a while, defeating Dalmonkia, the world champions of 2020. As you were mentioning, they were kind of a team destined for 10th, right? And nobody was really talking about them. But they've got Edgar, right? A guy who's been in the world champ himself. And, you know, he has so much experience. And maybe he can slowly carry this team of young, newer players. At least some of them.
Yeah.
Not all of them. Obviously, they do have some veterans in their lineup.
Sure. You know, I mean, for me, I think I've been pretty outspoken that I generally like less teams in playoffs. That's my thing. And so we have 6 teams now in our new format. But kind of objectively, it seems superior here right now based on how these last few weeks of regular season are going, because without that 6th team, like, these matches wouldn't mean anything, right? And this is actually now suddenly really exciting, and there's a real chance for either of these teams to turn it around. So, you know, so this is the kind of series that makes me change my mind about feeling like I wish we had 5 teams in playoffs instead of 6.
Yeah. No, it's good. We got the hype coming in here. And this is going to be an interesting matchup. I am personally a fan of the Cho'Gath seeing more and more play. I think he is, I wouldn't call him like sleeper OP, but he definitely has a lot more potential and deserves to be picked from time to time, right? We were talking about how in that lane matchup, maybe it's not going to have the greatest time. He's actually doing fine, right? His sustain is so good that even through Aatrox's harass onto a melee champ, he's like, yeah, whatever. I'll just hit these minions and get my health back. No problem at all. He can build very tanky into tons of armor to deal with pretty much everybody except the Victor. But, you know, you were talking about alongside of the Sleepy Trouble Bubbles, right, from Zoe. If you line up that CC all together and you get that insane amount of true damage with this Feast onto a tank, you know, we're seeing a lot of tanks now in the LCK.
Yes.
Maybe that's the answer, right? Because when you're looking at Hecarim, Gragas, Aatrox, these guys that can stack a ton of health, maybe that's how you just break through them in one fell swoop.
And that's what I was going to mention, too, about this Cho'Gath rise right now, because at the beginning of the season, and even going as far back as the Keswick Cup, basically all of Season 11 and the preseason that comes with it, as we will see first Drake here, the start of the season, it felt like Initiation was all about, you know, the control mages. Like, where does, oh boy, speaking of, where does the, you know, Shockwave go? Can we see the big Scatter the Weak engage? And then the tanks would follow up with their engage, and that was kind of the way. But now it feels like the top lane has been the main engage tool and has been so important that front line often defines how we front-to-back team fight right now. And Cho'Gath kind of throws a wrench into the gears of all of that, as you were saying, and can really disrupt how the tank line operates even with the silence. So
yeah,
it's really cool to see this big meta shift.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the silence, but also it's like, you try to go in there, you're no longer just safe, right? We see so many like Scion players and Gragas players just jump in there. You're just going to die, as we do have an engage down on the bottom side. Ignite is used by the Light, but Effort kind of just laughs at them as they trade back an equal amount of damage. Krako's busy pushing the lane for Fate, who has been harassed quite a bit, as Empty just running by. He actually went ahead and stole the red buff while that was happening. So
yeah, not only the red buff, but also the... Oh, I thought he actually got the Raptors here. I guess I was wrong about that one, but he's doing so much vertical jungling, and here we go.
Ooh, Effort this time around is going to have to flash, and he is going to get that reset on the jump, but kind of wishes he had Ignite this time around, I'm betting, as Prince is going to have a fun time running them down. You know, level 6 here on Henna, but does not matter. He's going to force that flash away from Henna, who did not have the reset jump. And that's actually going to be a win at the end of the day for Prince and Effort.
Yeah. If he had his Arcane Shift, if we were later on in the game, we would have been able to chase him, but it's on such a long cooldown at this stage. Can't actually make that happen. But, you know, I mean, this is really nice control over the jungle here so far for Umpty. And he's been able to get a lot more value, I think, in this early stage of the game than Krako has. Just making a lot of aggressive plays. You know, you see Krako go into mid to help support the Victor, and he goes steal a camp. He's got good vision control over the Drake and the Herald right now. Umpty does, and this is the power of Udyr that hasn't really been discussed that much, you know? I mean, I think as our casting duos are here in the LCK, we've talked about it a lot, but I think it's something that people don't realize is how much he's able to control vision and clear vision so consistently. That makes it hard to play around the Zoe, and makes it hard to play around objectives when you just don't have that information. Speaking of, Effort's going to fight for it here.
I'm just kind of alone over here. Finally, Delight and Lava will rotate on over. Effort zoned away by that bubble, and now he's going to take a huge amount of damage. Does not have that flash, but it is going to be smited down here by Umpty, and the rest of Liiv Sandbox just on the run. As nobody really wants to get in here, we're going to have another flash. Sleep on top of another one, and he should just be dead. That's going to be the kill given over to Umpty, who can drop down this Rift Herald now if he'd like to.
Massive advantage for Fredit Brion on this exchange, and the Trouble Bubble is such the most critical part of this because no one can get into that choke point with the bubble there. You know, you're going to get slept. You're trying to funnel through there. Umpty felt very confident that they were going to have the fast track in to defend the Herald, so he sticks on it, and that's one of the things Udyr can do in these early parts of the game is actually just take these early Heralds, take these early Drakes, because he's just unchallenged and has such an easy way of getting out if he is spotted. And they had the follow-up ready, so watch this again. Lava's trouble bubble here around where Croco and Effort stand is so critical, because you can't really retreat here now if you're Croco and Effort. Now you're locked into this fight where you can't trade. Fate can't get in there. I mean, you can see he does avoid the trouble bubble, but it's already too late. And the fight just, you know, obviously isn't going to go your way anymore at this point. And I think you feel confident to fight this as Liiv Sandbox because you have the Aatrox and you know about it. Even though they had vision taken away earlier, they were able to identify this was happening, and they felt like, okay, well, if we can get Aatrox in there, we definitely turn this fight. But he was zoned out by Hoya, and they just didn't get the fight they were looking for. It was just an unfair fight on both ends.
Yeah, and kind of comes down to what you were talking about before the fight even began, right? You were talking about the priority that Udyr Zoe offer you. I mean, Fate had a wave under his turret, and he's like, oh man, I gotta rotate over for this one. So he gets rotated over there slower than Lava. Umpty's already on the Rift Herald because he feels the priority from the mid lane. And, you know, they're able to just get that fight started on their terms. And as you mentioned, the Zoe had so much more effectiveness in that fight compared to Fate's Victor. And it all comes down to the matchups that we have. So both big early objectives go the way of Bro, as Hoya is in a little bit of trouble here. He's going to be popped back, and now he's just going to feast the minion. He knows he's dead, so he's just going to try to delay as much time as possible. Does not have his feast anymore, so just being annoying.
This ends up being not terrible for Liiv Sandbox in the bottom lane. He's you know, a lot of extra farm here to Prince, but they're going to be able to take this pressure here and turn that into a Rift Herald in the mid lane. So it's not for free what Liiv Sandbox get there on the top side of the map. There is a pretty hefty cost that comes with it. But, you know, at least they got the Ezreal farm there bottom side. He's actually up very significantly in CS after that early exchange. So, you know, at the end of the day, Liiv Sandbox holding on tight here. There are some parts of this game that they still have control over, as this mid lane is just going terribly for Fate.
Yeah. Remember that Lava did this to Showmaker as well with his Zoe. So Lava's no stranger to making the mid lane look easy on the Zoe, right? And we are going to have Effort and Croco actually stick around and try to fight over this Scuttle Crab.
Not so sure about this one with Zoe so close by. You have to be really careful. You get slept, and that is the end of the fight. So they do think better of it here. Well, I mean, we see another Drake just stolen away so quickly here from Umpty. Completely uncontested. The speed of which he can control this jungle. I mean, he's up 30 CS right now. Well, actually, 23.
Rounding up there.
Rounding up a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Doing the caster analyst, just really trying to make my point, like, stand through. Maybe bending the truth a little bit, but... I mean, look, he's up 20 CS. Okay,
Still
we'll give
counts.
it to him. Still counts, right? I mean, it's not 30, but it's 20. He's 2-0-1, and he's got 2 Drakes under his belt. And unfortunately, this Hecarim is not finding value. Not yet.
Yeah, the Hecarim, you know, first pick on the side of Liiv Sandbox, and the Hecarim has shot up in priority in the drafts. As Henna is getting on in there, going to do a nice amount of burst damage to Prince. Just gets him out of the lane. But, you know, so far, as you mentioned, the Udyr's having so much more effectiveness in this early game as Delight comes down here, so Prince, he'll stick around, but he will have to be careful.
Yeah, that True Shot Barrage is just kind of to deter any sort of collapse in while he waits for Effort to arrive. He will be able to catch this wave. It's actually funny how in solo queue, True Shot Barrage, usually think of it as a finisher. You only use it if you're going to get a kill, but in pro play, it's usually used for wave manipulation and actually protecting your turret and things like this. Sometimes you can get a kill with it in pro play, but it's usually used with, the way it was used just there. Uh-oh.
I think
he doesn't know.
He saw Croco.
Did he step on the ward?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Croco just ran over it, and I thought Umpty would just stay, but seems like Liiv Sandbox didn't commit to it. Maybe they saw some of the positioning from Hoya, saw that he wasn't scared. Maybe they didn't want to take the chance.
I mean, look at all these vision pings, by the way, that we're seeing. I assume they're from Umpty. He keeps pinging everywhere where he thinks there's vision, and then he goes to it and he clears it. Like, this actually just keeps happening, and he's literally like doing the vision is here ping.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how like this, you know, this Udyr can actually manipulate vision for Zoe so much. That's why I really would have liked that ban much more than the Sion ban that we did see in the draft. Because the synergy between these two champions is way, I feel, underrated by so many of our teams here in the LCK.
Yeah, they're having a lot of fun with that so far. We mentioned how Summit, you know, he's kind of the guy that's been carrying Liiv Sandbox alongside Krako. Krako hasn't really had much of a chance in this game to do, you know, the big plays. He hasn't really visited the top lane all too much. He did get that 1 kill for Summit. But other than that, I mean, this turret is still up past 14 minutes and they didn't get the Rift Herald, so you know things are not going well for Liiv Sandbox because generally they're feeling a lot better about the position of that top lane. And you were talking about Umpty running around clearing vision. I mean, Delight's doing the same thing. They're kind of like a duo now, as they have left Henna alone in the bottom side to just catch waves. They're not trying to push down there, so.
I mean, it's crazy, Valdez. Look at Umpty just clear vision again. And every time he's doing this, you know, you see that Krako is just a little bit too far behind to catch up with it. And then they're fighting and tussling over that middle vision on the bottom side of the mid lane there, that bush. Krako's here on a ward, even though he has the Scuttler controlled. They know that he's there, so Umpty can actually take so much more of his jungle away. Lava's going to get mid turret. I mean, this is just starting to look like a disaster here for Liiv Sandbox.
Oh man, Prince is alone down here. He cleanses and he flashes, but it does not mean he will get away. 3-on-1 as Effort is desperately trying to clear vision in their jungle. And that's just a free kill that they scoop up there, and that's going to kind of shore up the way that bottom lane has been going for Bro.
And look at what Summit's doing here. Like, the response, you could tell based on how Summit moved and where the question mark pings were from Liiv Sandbox that they weren't sure where Umpty was at all, but Umpty literally knew they were on the Rift Herald because he had that ward there. They didn't know because he didn't sweep the Rift Herald pit. So at that time, you feel like, okay, we're concerned about guaranteeing this Herald. That's where the brain of Liiv Sandbox is at. They don't have any idea that Umpty is here. There's a control ward, so you feel fairly safe as you know, Prince here to be down here alone. And as his support, you know, and who's unfortunately, as you can see, very far zoned out here. You feel like, okay, well, I can leave him down there for a little bit. We need to clear vision, but they just were mistaken because Krako was nowhere nearby, and Fredit Brion knew it. They capitalized. They have vision control. I mean, look at the ward score here. I talk about it all the time with the Udyr pick with 37-17.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happens when your Hecarim's kind of running around trying to put out fires everywhere, and Udyr just has so much more run of the map, especially with the help of his mid lane, as we have talked about. This third Drake is going to go down at 17 minutes into the game, and now they're on Cloud Drake's Soul. And, you know, it is just a Cloud Drake, but at the same time, you know, that's so nice to get this early on in the game. And Bro are just killing it. You know, they're not really mixing anything up. We saw 3 people on the top side. Liiv Sandbox not able to convert that into a kill as Hoya just flashed away, playing the weak side very well and safely. And yeah, they're just kind of cruising through the mid game, feeling pretty good about their situation.
Yeah, I mean, there are champions on Liiv Sandbox side that can scale up, but Fredit Brion have just kind of been able to get away with a game where, I mean, I don't even want to say get away, but they've taken an early game away from Liiv Sandbox's comp that can function very well around these objectives. I mean, the second Rift Herald is so difficult to place even for Krako. I mean, that was the, you know, the opportunity cost, I guess, for Fredit Brion just deciding to take the gank rather than actually contesting the Herald. But where does he even put this right now with all the priority? It's so difficult.
Look at Umpty. I mean, he
doesn't care about anything.
Technically 1v2? No, he's just running down Hecarim. Fate can't rotate over there, as he'll just get blown up by the Zoe, so he just has to run down the lane. And Umpty is really, you know, showing his dominance here on the Rift.
I mean, he knows that he has so much vision that he's even going to commit to a blue trinket just for actually kind of some hidden vision where you can actually look for a pick. As this is just a collapse that looks like it's destined to fail. The cask is late. Oh, Valdez, they're trying.
Yeah. Can't really blame them. You know, they have this comp that goes pretty hard in, and, you know, you've got Gragas, Hecarim, even the Aatrox, you're just going straight forward and trying to look for engages, but when you're behind, everybody on the enemy team has their flash, so it's just a pretty simple button that you press to get away from that one. It's a good time to do it, right? While there's no objectives up, maybe you can force a fight over the Cloud Drake when their flashes are then down. So I don't mind it. You know, you gotta try to make some plays happen. You gotta be proactive as Liiv Sandbox. You're not that far behind. At the same time, as you mentioned, Victor and Ezreal is pretty insane scaling, so
yeah,
maybe you just try to sit back and stop the bleeding as much as possible.
I think that definitely has to be the strategy here for Liiv Sandbox now. And the scary part of it, because Fredit Brion had this lead and they've turned it into 3 Drakes, is they get this tempo advantage where if you're Liiv Sandbox, you don't really want to fight, but you have to fight over this next Drake, or else Udyr is just going to be so fast. Speaking of which...
Oh, man. Yeah, especially with the Cloud Rift, too. He just runs into the jungle, he's like, yeah, I dare you to try to chase me now.
Udyr is in such a weird place right now. After he got a little bit nerfed, you know, he's still very powerful and still very popular. And it's very difficult for Riot to actually balance him too significantly right now, because if you change him too much, it becomes kind of unplayable in low levels. And, you know, as far as I understand, there's going to be a rework for him soon, right? So, like, it's kind of hard to mess with his champion too much right now. And it's so crazy that he's suddenly been figured out as this amazing champion for this meta and getting vision control. And no matter how much we've all have criticized certain Udyr priority in drafts, and even in this particular game, you know, it's weak side top, it's very difficult for him to snowball any lanes. He's just always where he needs to be, and that's the kind of playstyle that Umpty has as a player. He likes to vertical jungle, he likes to steal camps away, he likes to be a vision clearer, he likes to be in his opponent's side of the map, and with this draft, he's just got the Rift as his playground. That feels bad, man. But yeah, I mean, this is so Umpty, right? And this game is playing out exactly the way that Fredit Brion wanted to.
Yeah, they're kind of just chilling. I mean, we talked about scaling on the side of Liiv Sandbox. They've got a Tristana, at least on the side of Bro, and we already talked about the Cho'Gath and potential tank shredding here. As Effort's in a little bit of an awkward spot here. He's going to get run down now by the aforementioned Udyr.
Look at all the wards! You can see everything! Like, never a shot is blind.
Oh, another one.
And also, you know, he grabbed the blue trinket, Lava did, just to make sure that there's nothing that he can't know before he lobs something in. I appreciate Fate getting this extra side lane done and gets a turret. They really need to fight for this Cloud Drake, or they're going to have to try to fight for something else while baiting the fight. You can't just give this one up to Fredit Brion, because then the game tempo just goes even faster from there, and they can even try to make plays around Baron. They get vision on the top side of the map, but they really need to rotate in right now. Spawns in 15.
Yeah. We have the back here from Cho'Gath. I think that Hoyo will just be teleporting into this one. Summit is able to save his teleport. He just uses that Cloud Rift and priority in the top side to just run on down.
Really like the position here for Liiv Sandbox. Fate is going to have to teleport in, but otherwise it's a nice place to be. Uh-oh.
Oh, man. Prince, not sure about that positioning. He takes way too much damage before the fight even begins. And you can see the counter engage here. Lava will take a bunch of damage. Delight is getting zoned out on the flank. Good cask is going to knock Hoya in. And now Summit is just a menace. Do they have the damage to burn through him is really the question. Lava's not landing the stuff that he needs to land in these team fights. That's actually going to be Bro backing off of that Cloud Drake. And Sandbox stopping the soul.
I pointed it out before we went into the fight, but I really like the position. And yes, Prince was a little bit out of position, but it felt intentional. He has Flash, he has his Arcane Shift, and always Kroko was ready to ult in. He had Ghost, he had his ult available. It felt like they were ready to trap Fredit Brion if they decided to collapse in and engage. And their composition doesn't have, you know, sustained damage. It has burst. So if after they did almost nab Prince, like after using so many cooldowns here, Prince gets caught. After this moment, where he's able to get away, like you can't fight this anymore as Fredit Brion, or you're going to get totally crushed because Kroko is exactly in position. Delight is trying to do a really cool flank here as well, which could have led to something. But now it's like, okay, we already used our burst tools. Even with Prince is at like, you know, 10% health here, he might as well be at full health because you can't get to him. And he's going to be able to do damage. He's not afraid. He's going to stay. And you just have to leave here as Fredit Brion after this because the sustained damage on the side of Liiv Sandbox is much better. And if you don't get that first pick or you don't set up a combo, you know, with the Cho'Gath, it's going to be a very hard fight.
Yeah, they didn't, you know, Zoe's great at the burst, but when you have that Aatrox in your face and you miss a couple of things, you're like, well, I guess Zoe doesn't exist. And just relying on Henna, and he's not really at a point right now where he's going to take over those fights, right? The Drake fight was very early on because of how many early Drakes were taken in this game.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wait for that Tristana to get online.
I do want to point out one more thing, too, on the kind of, like, idea of potentially that being baited was the cleanse was available as well. Like, he was able to cleanse out of that initial CC and get away. So, effort?
Probably looking for some ward clearing and gets caught. It's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference in terms of vision control between these two teams. You got a Gragas and a Hecarim who could try to clear that away versus the Umpty, who's just going to not care about anything.
Slaps them both, runs away. Just Udyr things.
They didn't get the Cloud Soul, but they're still going to make that Baron play I was talking about here.
Yeah, you can easily do this, especially with Cho'Gath. You can also just turn off. They have the burst damage coming on in. That's going to be Lava picking up the kill. As Kroko, he's pretty fast himself, but the flash will come in from Umpty, who maybe went a little bit too far. The rest of his team not really backing him up on that one. Lava had to run all the way around from the blue pit. And now Liiv Sandbox are actually just going to casually take a turret.
This is the power of Hecarim in team fights. You know, he's just able to do so much. He's able to not only peel, but also threaten kills. You know, in some of these exchanges, you really do have to respect it. Because, yeah, the choke point is good there for a lot of the control that Cho'Gath is going to put off, but you have to make sure you know where Kroko is and what his potential is. I think this is the effort pick where he was like body slamming in, I believe we just saw there. Tries to cask out. That's really unfortunate. If he's here, this fight could have even been better for Liiv Sandbox. He's not, unfortunately. As watched, Kroko is actually able to get through this choke unscathed, so he can actually just go into the back of the fight and ult, and then gets his second charge through. And he does so much damage that is Fredit Brion here, who can't touch Prince yet again. This is the problem. The consistent damage the Ezreal is going to put off. You can't fight that anymore. So Kroko, if he doesn't get through there, totally different fight.
Yeah. We don't really see Ezreal too often nowadays, right? I think his win rate is 80% because he's 4-1 or something.
Yeah, like that.
But in comps like this, where it's kind of all over the place, and you're up against a comp that has a couple of melee guys that have CC, and you want to be dashing and dodging around the Rel and the Zoe and CC like that, it feels pretty good when you have this pretty thick front line as well that is taking a lot of the pressure and focus away from you. And Prince, he did have that little oopsie where he, you know, flew a little bit too close to the sun. You mentioned, thankfully, he had the cleanse, but other than that, he's been pretty clean. And, you know, he did win the early game alongside of effort in that lane down the bottom side, so.
Yeah, it's just so difficult to get on top of him, you know, even with the Udyr, you know, he has Arcane Shift, so collapsing on top of him, plus his positioning has been pretty good. Like, you know, that last fight he got caught, but I feel like that was part of the plan, was to try to, not him getting caught, but him actually trying to pull that aggro, right? Like, if you're trying to set up a bait, you're still not trying to get stunned, but, you know, he had cleanse, etc. But, you know, this is a team composition for Fredit Brion that I think is so reliant on Lava playing well. And he has played the early game well, and laning is one thing, but actually you've got to hit these paddle stars in team fights. You've got to be trading. Like, every single Q needs to be poking somebody, or else you're just going to run out of room real fast in these team fights. Liiv Sandbox will collapse in.
All right, here we go. They get a really nice flank onto that backline, and Delight just gets blown up. Huge damage, though, from the Zoe, but it's not quite enough. They have to kite this one back, as that's a big rupture. Lava will be looking for the kill. Nice block there from Summit. Once again, Henna is just kind of, you know, he's a little bit zoned out. He's not really able to do consistent damage on the Tristana, and Lava's just trying to do it all by himself.
I mean, he's got to try, you know, in fights like this. They're not going to be able to take this Drake away, but this is starting to become very concerning.
Oh, okay, here we go. This is where Bro really turned it on. We got another flash here for Lava. He's going to come on forward, look for the bubble. He finds another one, misses actually on Prince, who cleanses away from that one. And look at the true shot barrage damage. Prince is just going 1v5 right now. He's gonna get knocked up, and Fate was able to kite back with him. And Bro just got baited so hard into that choke point and got dominated.
Yeah, I want to watch that fight again because Lava's target priority there was greedy. He wanted to actually get the sleep onto Prince so he could actually hit both, but he doesn't hit the follow-up paddle star, so he kills neither. of the Aatrox nor the Ezreal there in that exchange. The follow-up is real. Fate comes through and just does a ton of damage to help assist him. And, I mean, True Shot Barrage, very strong ability, as it turns out, but this is a kind of mistake that's going to cost you a Baron. And Fredit Brion were so ahead in this game, their composition doesn't scale as well as Liiv Sandbox does in terms of straight front-to-back team fighting. We're going to watch this Drake fight once again. But this is where if you don't actually set up a combo and you get caught, like the walls close in. Someone actually prevents retreat here. And look at where Fate is. There's some of these Victor compositions where Victor is not worried about where he is anymore because he's just walking in as if he's a tank because no one can actually kill him. But there's so much, you know, extra CC. I'm going to watch this bottom fight that happens once again, though, for Lava. They will take this Drake away. And Fredit Brion are like, okay, we're going to come in here where you got the Drake, but we're not going to let this go for free. They chase through. Lava has the additional flash you talk about. They hit a sleep on the Summit. Krako's obviously zoned out and is going to die. But then let's see, watch this, because he actually looks for the sleep onto Prince and then misses the paddle. And if he actually hits that, he kills Prince, and then you could turn around and kill Summit. But Prince actually hits the True Shot Barrage, goes over the wall, and gets a double kill, and everything changes. If they had actually just slept the Aatrox and killed him instead, it's a much easier follow-up. So unfortunately, Lava, with very much looking for the greedy double there, ends up with nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Prince played that so well as well. He, you know, Lava was expecting the Arcade shift, but actually Prince delayed it a little bit because he had to cleanse first, and it got real messy in there. And, you know, now with the Baron and Liiv Sandbox with a unbelievably fed Ezreal and Victor in this game, I think it's going to be really difficult for them to lose from here.
Yeah.
Prince finishing his last item there. He's got 3.5 items at this point, and that's that sweet spot right now for Victor and Ezreal. I don't know if they have it in them on the side of Bro to really challenge this amount of scaling.
I think they're going to struggle, especially when, you know, the walls are closing in again. Like, that's the analogy I keep using, but like Liiv Sandbox have a composition that will just walk forward and kill you. Fredit Brion need a combo, or they need Lava to hit Paddle Stars like every time it's on cooldown, and he's not able to do it. Here we go, one more shot.
Ooh, Prince in the front line this time around. He's going to get a track repelled. They're trying desperately to dive onto him, but he survives for an insanely long period of time, and that's going to do it. They tried their very hardest to get onto that back line. At the end of the day, it is Ezreal, and, you know, they used all that to try to get onto the backline carry the Ezreal. Fate and the rest of them are just sitting there doing insane amounts of damage.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just end here. They were looking to back and reset, but no, they decided that we've got enough of a wave here. We have an Ezreal who can actually do empowered shots on these turrets. I mean, they are going to go down. Fredit Brion in serious trouble here.
Yeah, they're just trying desperately. The feast goes off. Henna's trying to go 1v4 right now. He's not able to get that kill, and he just gets blasted in the face by the Ezreal. That's going to do it for game number 1. Liiv Sandbox with the overwhelming mid-game